Korean Mafia boss desperately hired a black lady as his bodyguard. She took down 15+ assassins in one night. She was the last person they expected to see at the security interview. Black. Female. Silent. When Jin Hyuk's desperate hiring manager asked for her credentials, Zora Knight simply slid across a folder containing nothing but a blank sheet of paper. My resume is classified. My existence is denied. My skills are why you'll hire me anyway. 12 hours later, she would become a legend in Seoul's underworld. They found the first assassin in the garden, unconscious but breathing. The second and third were discovered in the East Wing corridor, one with a shattered kneecap, the other with 3 broken fingers. By dawn, 15 bodies would litter the grounds of Jin Hyuk's compound, all alive, all professional killers, all neutralized by a woman the Korean Mafia had mocked as a diversity hire. But Jin Hyuk wasn't laughing when he hired her. He was dying. 3 assassination attempts in 2 weeks. His security chief poisoned. His trusted lieutenants disappearing. His empire crumbling from within. The bounty on his head had reached 8 million won, and every killer in Asia knew the deadline. He wouldn't live to see the next full moon. Find me someone, anyone, who can keep me alive until I expose the traitor, he had ordered his staff. I don't care where they come from. I don't care what they look like. I only care if they can stop a bullet meant for me. What Jin didn't know was that Zora Knight didn't stop bullets. She stopped armies. What the assassins didn't know was that she had spent 6 years as the military's darkest secret, a ghost operative with no name, no rank, and no mercy. What Seoul's underworld couldn't have predicted was that hiring her wasn't Jin's mistake. Hunting him was theirs. The night they came for Jin Hyuk, they brought 15 of the deadliest assassins money could buy. They brought poison, garrotes, blades, and bullets. They brought their hatred, their greed, their arrogance. Zora Knight brought only her rage and her pain, and by sunrise, it would be more than enough. If you believe extraordinary talent comes from unexpected places, hit subscribe to our channel right now. Only people who judge books by their covers won't. Jin Hyuk had built his empire through blood and brilliance. From the slums of Busan to the penthouses of Gangnam, his name inspired fear and respect in equal measure. The White Tiger Syndicate controlled everything from shipping routes to nightclubs, construction companies to cryptocurrency exchanges. For 15 years, Jin had outmaneuvered rivals, bribed officials, and eliminated threats with surgical precision. But now, at 42, the hunter had become the hunted. It began with whispers. Rival families meeting in secret. Former allies suddenly unavailable for business. Then came the attacks, a car bomb that killed his driver but missed Jin by seconds. A sniper's bullet that grazed his shoulder during a rare public appearance. Poison in his morning tea that sent 3 taste testers to early graves. Someone wanted Jin Hyuk dead. Someone close. Someone patient. And they weren't working alone. Jin's paranoia escalated to madness. He fired half his security team, changed safe houses nightly, trusted no one. His empire began to fracture under the weight of his fear. Lieutenants questioned his leadership behind closed doors. Business partners distanced themselves from what increasingly looked like a sinking ship. Then came the final blow. His chief of security, Min-ho, a man who had protected Jin for 12 years, collapsed during a meeting, foaming at the mouth, his dying words a warning: midnight. Full moon. They're coming. Jin knew the date. Exactly 1 week away. 7 days to find a protector in a city where everyone seemed to be waiting for his downfall. 7 days before the most powerful criminal organizations in Asia would send their best to claim the bounty on his head. Desperation makes men do strange things. It made Jin Hyuk, a man steeped in tradition and prejudice, consider the unthinkable. Zora Knight wasn't looking for work that day. She was looking for peace. Something that had eluded her since her dishonorable discharge 3 years ago. Seoul was supposed to be anonymous, a place to disappear while the nightmares of what she'd done, what she'd been forced to do, for her country slowly faded. They never did. Instead, she took jobs that required her skills without asking questions about her past. Nightclub bouncer. Private security for foreign businessmen. Underground fight clubs when money ran low. She kept to herself, spoke little, and tried to forget the woman she had been. The weapon they had made her. When the robbery erupted at the convenience store, Zora was just buying cigarettes and instant ramen. 3 men, armed and desperate, threatening the elderly shop owner. They didn't see Zora as a threat. Just another customer to control. Their mistake. 15 seconds. That's all it took. No weapons. No words. Just the precise, economical violence that had been burned into her muscle memory through years of black site training. The first attacker's wrist snapped when he pointed his gun at the cashier. The second lost consciousness from a strike to the carotid that was too fast for security cameras to capture clearly. The third tried to run but found himself face down on the linoleum, arm hyperextended behind him, Zora's knee pressed between his shoulder blades. What Zora didn't know was that across the street, in a black Mercedes with tinted windows, sat Jin Hyuk's last remaining trusted advisor, watching everything. "We found someone," he told Jin over a secure line. Someone impossible. Jin Hyuk's compound resembled a fortress more than a home. 12-foot walls topped with motion sensors. Armed guards patrolling manicured gardens. Bulletproof glass in every window. The architecture, minimalist concrete and steel, projected power and inaccessibility. Like its owner, the building rejected intimacy and embraced isolation. When Zora arrived for the interview, wearing combat boots, black jeans, and a leather jacket that concealed the scars on her arms, the guard smirked. One muttered something in Korean about Jin's desperation reaching new lows. Another laughed and suggested more offensive possibilities for why she was really there. Zora understood every word. She filed their faces away in her memory. Later, when her position was secure, they would learn the cost of underestimation. The interview wasn't really an interview. It was Jin Hyuk, surrounded by 4 remaining bodyguards, studying her like a specimen under glass. His questions were blunt, insulting. "You're American. Why are you in Korea? You're a woman. How can you protect me from professional killers? You're black. Won't you stand out too much in Seoul?" Zora's answers were equally blunt. "I'm here because no one looks for American ghosts in Korea. Gender doesn't matter when you're unconscious from a crushed trachea. Standing out means your enemies watch me instead of looking for the knife at their back." Jin's final question revealed his desperation. "Why should I trust you with my life?" Zora's eyes, hollow from years of carrying unbearable weight, met his. "You shouldn't. Trust got you here. Fear keeps you alive. I'm not offering trust. I'm offering survival." Jin Hyuk hired her on the spot. Not because he believed in her, but because he had run out of alternatives. 6 days before the deadline. 6 days to prepare for an onslaught. What he couldn't possibly understand was that for Zora Knight, 6 days was 5 more than she needed. If you believe people deserve respect based on their actions, not appearances, like this story right now, only prejudiced people would turn away from truth. The White Tiger Syndicate's reaction to Zora was immediate and hostile. Jin's cousin and second-in-command, Seo Jun, openly challenged the decision during the first strategy meeting. "You've lost your mind, cousin. Bringing in an outsider. An American. A woman." Seo Jun's voice dripped with disdain. "How do we know she isn't working for our enemies?" Jin's response was ice-cold. "Because our enemies wouldn't send someone so obvious. They'd send someone like you, Seo Jun. Someone I'm supposed to trust." The implication silenced the room. Jin suspected everyone now, even family. Especially family. Zora stood silently against the wall, observing everything. The power dynamics. The shifting alliances. The poorly concealed resentments. Within an hour, she had identified at least 3 potential traitors among Jin's inner circle. But she said nothing. Information was leverage, and she needed every advantage. After the meeting, Jin's sister, Mi-young, cornered Zora in the hallway. Unlike the others, her hostility wasn't veiled behind false politeness. "My brother is desperate, not stupid," she hissed in perfect English. "One mistake, one sign you're not what you claim, and I'll kill you myself." Zora simply nodded. "Smart. You should be protecting him with that loyalty." "I am." "No. You're threatening his new bodyguard instead of watching for real threats. Amateur move." Mi-young's face flushed with anger, hand moving to the knife hidden at her waist. Zora didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Just stared with the empty patience of someone who had faced worse threats before breakfast most days of her military career. Mi-young backed down first. Had to. There was something in Zora's eyes that promised violence on a level the younger woman had never encountered. "Just remember," Mi-young muttered as she walked away, "family protects family. You're just an employee." Zora allowed herself a small, bitter smile. Family betrays family too. History's full of examples. For the first 48 hours, Zora didn't sleep. She memorized every entrance, exit, blind spot, and vulnerability in the compound. She studied the staff rotations, noted which guards were diligent and which were complacent. She inspected Jin's food before each meal, tested his drinks, swept his rooms for surveillance devices every 6 hours. Jin watched her work with growing unease. She was methodical, emotionless, exhaustive in her preparation. Like a machine programmed for a single purpose. "You need to rest," he told her at the end of the second day. "Sleep is a luxury for people with futures," she replied, continuing to check the pressure plates she'd installed beneath the floorboards. "What does that mean?" Zora paused, looking up at him with eyes that had seen too much. "It means I sleep when the job is done. Not before." "And what happens after the job?" Her laugh was hollow, empty of humor. "There is no after. There's just the next job. The next fight. The next day of trying to outrun what I've done." It was the most personal thing she'd said since arriving. Jin didn't press further. He recognized trauma when he saw it. Had caused enough of it himself. On the third day, Zora Knight showed exactly why Jin Hyuk had been right to hire her. The attack came during a meeting with the heads of Jin's legitimate businesses. 3 of Jin's own security personnel, supposedly loyal for years, suddenly drew weapons. Their target wasn't just Jin, but everyone in the room, a complete decapitation of the White Tiger leadership. Zora moved before the first gun cleared its holster. A letter opener from the desk embedded itself in the first attacker's wrist. Her body followed, a blur of controlled violence. One traitor went down with a crushed larynx. Another with dislocated shoulders. The third managed to fire a single shot that grazed Jin's executive assistant before Zora slammed his head into the marble conference table with enough force to crack both. 7 seconds. 3 attackers neutralized. 0 fatalities. Jin's legitimate business partners sat frozen, drinks halfway to lips, eyes wide with shock. They had just witnessed something most people only saw in action movies. The reality was both more mundane and more terrifying. No dramatic flips or impossible moves, just the brutal efficiency of someone trained to end threats with minimal motion and maximum damage. Meeting adjourned, Jin said calmly, straightening his tie as Zora zip-tied the unconscious would-be assassins. "We'll reschedule for next quarter." After the executives fled, Jin turned to Zora. "You could have killed them." "Death is final," she replied, checking for hidden weapons on the incapacitated men. "Information is valuable. They'll tell us who sent them. And if they don't talk." Zora's expression darkened. "Everyone talks eventually. I was trained to make sure of it." For the first time since hiring her, Jin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the attempt on his life. Whatever demons drove Zora Knight, they were older and darker than his own. That night, Jin gathered his remaining inner circle, now reduced to his sister, his cousin, and 3 lieutenants who hadn't yet tried to kill him. The mood was somber. The betrayal had come from within, from men who had protected Jin for years. "No one leaves the compound until the full moon," Jin declared. No communications with the outside. No exceptions. Seo Jun slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. We're trapping ourselves. Better trapped with known enemies than opening doors for unknown ones, Zora said from her position by the door. Jean nodded. Ms. Knight will implement complete lockdown protocols. Anyone attempting to breach security will be considered hostile. And if there are more traitors among us? Mi Young asked, eyeing the faces around the table. Jin's smile was cold. Then we'll find out very quickly who deserves to be part of White Tiger's future. If you think loyalty is earned through actions not words, comment respect below. Only fake friends would disagree with that truth. The interrogation of the captured traitors revealed what Zora had already suspected. The attack on the full moon would be coordinated across multiple rival organizations. The Black Dragon Syndicate from Japan. The Golden Triangle Cartel from Thailand. Even the Russian Bratva had sent specialists. All united by a single purpose, eliminating Jin Hyuk and dividing his territory. More disturbing was the confirmation of Jin's fears. Someone close to him, someone in his inner circle, had orchestrated everything. The traitors knew the name, but refused to reveal it even under extreme duress. They're more afraid of that person than they are of us, Zora observed, washing blood from her hands after the 4th hour of questioning. That tells us something. Jean leaned against the wall outside the makeshift interrogation room, face ashen. What does it tell us? That whoever betrayed you commands fear beyond what you can inflict. That means power, resources, and influence that rivals or exceeds your own. Family, Jean whispered. Zora nodded once. Most likely. That night, over rice wine and silence, Jean told Zora about his rise to power. About growing up poor in Busan. About watching his father beaten to death by loan sharks. About building his empire piece by bloody piece until the name Hyuk meant something in a world that had tried to erase him. I never trusted anyone except family, he confessed, the alcohol loosening his tongue. And now I can't even trust them. Family is just biology, Zora replied, still sober, still vigilant. Loyalty is choice. Is that what you learned in the military? Loyalty. Zora's eyes hardened. I learned that loyalty to institutions is a fairy tale they tell you to make the nightmares easier to bear. What nightmares? Her smile was razor thin. The ones where you see the faces of everyone you've killed because someone with stars on their shoulder decided they needed to die. Jean studied her. How many? Faces or stars? Both. Zora looked away. Too many faces. Not enough stars to justify them. In that moment, Jean understood something fundamental about the woman he had hired. She wasn't just skilled, she was broken in exactly the right places to make her the perfect protector. Her rage wasn't hot and impulsive like his own. It was cold, controlled, and constantly searching for a target worthy of its release. He had given her 15 assassins to focus that rage upon. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The 4th day brought a discovery that changed everything. While doing a routine sweep of the East Wing, Zora found a hidden surveillance hub in a room that supposedly housed old financial records. Multiple monitors showing every corner of the compound. Evidence that Jean had been watched for months, his security protocols studied, his routines mapped with meticulous precision. More disturbing were the detailed profiles of each member of Jin's inner circle, psychological assessments, leverage points, bribes accepted and rejected. The level of intelligence gathering went far beyond what rival syndicates could achieve. This was professional. Military grade. When she brought Jean to see it, his face went pale. This isn't just criminals, he said, staring at the sophisticated equipment. This is government. Zora nodded, examining a routing system that bounced signals across multiple satellites. Not just any government. This is intelligence agency work. CIA, MSS, or the Korean NIS, Jean finished, naming his own country's National Intelligence Service. Zora didn't contradict him. The pieces were falling into place. The coordinated attacks. The inside information. The professional methodology. Jin Hyuk had graduated from organized crime to national security threat, probably through his recent expansion into cryptocurrency and international shipping. Lines had been crossed. Examples needed to be made. They've turned someone in your family, Zora said bluntly. Someone who believes they're being patriotic by bringing you down. Jin's laugh was bitter. Patriotic? My businesses employ thousands. I've built schools, hospitals. I've done more for this country than the politicians who take my bribes. Patriots rarely see nuance, Zora replied, thinking of her own blind loyalty once upon a time. They see targets. That night, Jin did something unprecedented. He gathered his entire household staff, every cook, gardener, driver, and maid, in the main hall. Beside him stood his sister, his cousin, and his 3 remaining lieutenants. Before them all, he bowed deeply. Someone here has betrayed me, he announced in Korean. Someone has decided I don't deserve to live. I won't pretend I'm a good man. I've done terrible things to build what we have. But I've always protected those who serve me loyally. He straightened, eyes moving from face to face. The attack will come on the full moon. Anyone who wishes to leave before then may do so now, with my blessing and enough money to start a new life. I won't force anyone to die for me. Silence fell over the hall. Staff exchanged nervous glances. Then, slowly, an elderly housekeeper who had served Jin's family for 30 years stepped forward. I stay, she said simply, bowing in return. One by one, others joined her. The head chef. The gardeners. The youngest maids. Not everyone, about a third of the staff gathered their courage and their severance packages and left. But those who remained stood taller, their loyalty now a choice rather than an obligation. Jin turned to Zora, who had watched the entire scene from the shadows. Loyalty is choice, he said, echoing her words. She nodded once, but her eyes were fixed on Jin's inner circle. Seo Jun looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Mi Young's face was a mask of perfect composure. The 3 lieutenants showed varying degrees of surprise at Jin's unprecedented humility. One of them was the traitor. Zora was now certain of it. She just needed to figure out which one before the full moon rose in 2 days' time. The time for passive defense was over. Zora Knight had been reactive long enough. That night, while the compound slept, she went hunting. If you think sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the quietest one, double tap that like button. Only fools ignore silent strength. Seo Jun's private quarters revealed a man living beyond his means. Luxury watches. Custom suits. Receipts for jewelry that cost more than most people earned in a year. Interesting, but not definitive. Greed was the baseline in Jin's world, not the exception. Mi Young's rooms told a different story. Beneath the cold exterior lived a woman with unexpected depth. Books on international law. Political philosophy. Handwritten journals filled with conflicted thoughts about family obligation versus moral principle. A hidden photo of Mi Young in a university graduation gown, arm in arm with a man in a government official's uniform. The lieutenant's quarters yielded less. One was a minimalist who seemed to own nothing personal at all, one was a family man with children's drawings taped to his mirror, and one was clearly a hedonist whose rooms smelled of expensive cologne and cheaper conquests. Zora returned to her Spartan quarters as dawn broke, mind working through the possibilities. The evidence pointed in multiple directions. The minimalist lieutenant could be hiding his true nature. The family man had clear vulnerabilities that could be exploited. The hedonist might need money to support his lifestyle. But Mi Young's hidden connection to a government official nagged at her. She found Jin in his private gym, working through fighting forms with the precision of someone who had learned combat out of necessity rather than sport. His technique was unorthodox but effective, the movements of a man who had fought his way out of poverty through sheer will and adaptability. Your sister, Zora said without preamble. Who was she before she joined your organization? Jin paused mid-strike. Mi Young. She was a law student. Top of her class at Seoul National University. Did she graduate? No. Our father's death changed everything. She left school to help me build the business. Did she want to? Jin's expression darkened. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking if your sister abandoned her own dreams to support yours. Jin resumed his forms, punching with more force than before. Family duty comes first. Mi Young understands that. Understanding duty and embracing it are different things. My sister would never betray me, Jin snapped, stopping again. We've shed blood together. We've buried enemies together. Zora met his glare without flinching. The deepest betrayals come from the deepest love. When someone believes they're saving you from yourself, they can justify anything. Jin threw a towel across the room in frustration. Enough. Focus on the external threat. I know my sister. Do you? Zora asked quietly. Or do you know who she pretends to be for your sake? The fifth day, one day before the full moon, brought with it a suffocating tension. The remaining staff moved through the compound like ghosts, speaking in whispers. Jin's inner circle gathered for final preparations, reviewing security protocols and escape routes. Zora had transformed the compound into a tactical nightmare for any invading force. Pressure plates beneath selected floorboards. Tripwires in blind corners. Improvised traps that would incapacitate rather than kill. She needed prisoners for questioning if they survived the night. During the final briefing, she outlined her strategy with clinical detachment. They'll come from multiple entry points. They'll have studied our security, so standard protocols are useless. Instead, we've created new blind spots, areas that appear vulnerable but are actually killing zones. Seo Jun interrupted. You keep saying, incapacitate and capture. These people are coming to slaughter us. Why aren't we meeting lethal force with lethal force? Zora's gaze was steady. Because dead men tell no tales. We need to know who sent them and why. One survivor can give us that. 15 survivors can give us everything. It's a mistake, Seo Jun insisted. These aren't street thugs. They're trained killers. So am I, Zora replied. The flatness of her tone, the absolute certainty behind the words, silenced further objections. As the meeting ended, Mi Young approached Zora in the hallway. Gone was the open hostility of their first encounter, replaced by something more measured. You think I betrayed my brother, she said without preamble. Zora didn't insult her with denial. I think you have connections you've hidden from him. I think you've sacrificed your own path to follow his. Those are patterns that concern me. Mi Young studied her for a long moment. You don't understand family. I understand duty. I understand sacrifice. I understand what it means to give up your soul for something you believe in. Zora's voice held a bitterness earned through experience. And I understand the moment you realize it wasn't worth it. My brother is worth it, Mi Young insisted. Is he? Or is saving him from himself worth it? There's a difference. Mi Young's composure slipped for just a moment, revealing something vulnerable beneath. You don't know anything about me. I know you keep a graduation photo hidden where Jean won't find it. I know you write in journals about moral philosophy and the nature of justice. I know you're more than the person you pretend to be in this house. Color drained from Mi Young's face. You went through my things. I'm protecting your brother. That means understanding everyone around him, especially those closest to him. Mi Young stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Be careful, Ms. Knight. Digging into people's private lives might reveal things neither you nor my brother are prepared to face. With that, she walked away, back straight, steps measured. Perfect composure restored. But Zora had seen the crack in the facade. Now she just needed to decide what it meant. That night, she found Jean on the rooftop garden, staring at the nearly full moon. Tomorrow night, that silver disc would be complete, and with its completion would come the attack they'd been preparing for. Do you trust me? Zora asked, standing beside him. Jean didn't look away from the moon. I don't trust anyone. But I believe you'll do whatever it takes to keep me alive tomorrow night. Why? Because you need the fight as much as I need protection. Now he turned to her, eyes searching her face. I recognize addiction when I see it, Ms. Knight. You're not here for money. You're here because fighting is the only time you feel anything at all. Zora didn't deny it. Couldn't. The military had broken something fundamental in her, then rebuilt her into a weapon. Civilian life had no place for what she had become. Combat was the only time the noise in her head quieted, the only time her purpose became clear and uncomplicated. Does it matter why I'm here as long as I do the job? Jean shrugged. I suppose not. But I wonder what happens to people like you when the fighting stops. When there's no one left to hurt. Zora looked up at the moon, its near-perfect circle promising completion tomorrow. People like me don't live long enough to find out. The morning of the full moon dawned with unnatural stillness. Zora had slept for exactly 3 hours, the minimum her body required to function at peak efficiency. She spent the day making final preparations, checking every trap, every escape route, every fallback position. By sunset, the compound was as ready as it would ever be. Jin's remaining security personnel, 12 men of questionable loyalty but necessary numbers, were positioned strategically throughout the grounds. The inner circle gathered in Jin's office for final instructions. No one leaves this room once night falls, Zora declared. Anyone who tries will be considered hostile and treated accordingly. So we just sit here while you fight off an army? Seo Jun asked incredulously. Yes. Because the only way to ensure Jin's safety is to keep him in a secure location surrounded by people I can watch. You still don't trust us, Mi Young observed. Zora met her gaze. I don't trust anyone. Including myself. As darkness fell, Jin poured drinks for everyone. An old tradition before battle, he explained. Even Zora accepted the ceremonial glass, though she had no intention of drinking it. To survival, Jin toasted. To truth, Zora countered. They drank. All except Zora, who pretended to sip then set her glass aside. No one noticed except Mi Young, whose eyes narrowed slightly. At exactly 10:47 p.m., the first alarm was triggered. A silent alert from the perimeter sensors. Zora checked the security feeds on a tablet. Nothing visible yet, but the pressure plates registered movement along the eastern wall. They're early, she said, rising from her position near the door. Good. Desperation makes people sloppy. How many? Jean asked, hand moving to the gun holstered under his jacket. Impossible to tell yet. At least 3 teams based on approach vectors. She turned to the room. Remember, no one leaves. No matter what you hear. No matter who screams. This room is secure. She paused at the door. One more thing. If I don't return, assume I'm dead and use the escape tunnel beneath the bookcase. The code is 4-7-3-1. Don't try to fight. Just run. Before anyone could respond, she was gone, locking the reinforced door behind her. The hunt had begun. If you believe that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who've been hunted themselves, hit that like button now. Only those who've never felt cornered would doubt that truth. The first 3 assassins died trying to breach the eastern perimeter. Not by Zora's hand, but by their own arrogance. They triggered the electrified wire she'd hidden in the climbing ivy, sending 50,000 volts through their bodies. Non-lethal, but completely incapacitating. They lay twitching on the ground as Zora emerged from the shadows, zip-tied their hands and feet, and injected them with a sedative that would keep them unconscious for hours. 3 down. Many more to come. The next team was more cautious. 2 snipers positioned on the adjacent building, covering a 4-man entry team approaching from the north garden. Zora had anticipated this. The garden path appeared unguarded, but pressure-sensitive plates beneath the decorative gravel would alert her to every step. She moved silently through the shadows of the compound, a ghost in black tactical gear. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Just the cold, mechanical efficiency of someone who had done this countless times before. The entry team never saw her coming. The first man went down with a precision strike to the vagus nerve, unconscious before he hit the ground. The second turned just in time to catch a throat strike that collapsed his windpipe enough to disable but not kill. The third and fourth reacted better, drawing weapons and firing. But Zora was already moving, using the third man as a shield. The fourth assassin's bullet caught his colleague in the shoulder. In the confusion that followed, both joined their teammates in unconsciousness. 7 down. The snipers realized something was wrong when their entry team stopped responding. One maintained position while the other moved to investigate. Rookie mistake. Zora had already calculated the most likely path the sniper would take. 3 minutes later, he walked directly into her trap, a simple tripwire connected to a stun grenade. The flashbang disoriented him long enough for Zora to close the distance and end his participation in the night's festivities with a precision strike behind the ear. 8 down. The remaining sniper, realizing his position was compromised, attempted to provide covering fire for yet another team approaching from the west. His first shot shattered a window in the main house. His second never came. Zora had used the momentary distraction to circle behind him. A sleeper hold rendered him unconscious in 12 seconds. 9 down. Inside Jin's office, the sound of gunfire and breaking glass had everyone on edge. Seo Jun paced nervously, checking his watch every few minutes. "This is madness," he muttered. "We should be fighting alongside her, not hiding in here like cowards." Jin remained seated behind his desk, outwardly calm. "Ms. Knight knows what she's doing. Does she?" Mi Young asked quietly. "Or is she leading them straight to us?" Jin frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that we know nothing about this woman except that she appeared exactly when you were most desperate. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" Before Jin could respond, the lights in the office went out. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, bathing the room in dim red light. Someone had cut the main power. "It's happening," Seo Jun whispered. "They're inside." Meanwhile, Zora was methodically working her way through the compound. 2 more assassins fell in the west corridor, one to a precision kick that dislocated his knee, the other to an arm bar that snapped his humerus. No killing blows. Just efficient, brutal incapacitation. 11 down. But these had been the easy ones. The first wave. Cannon fodder sent to test defenses and tire defenders. The real threat would come next. As if on cue, a new team breached the north entrance. 3 operators moving with a synchronized precision that spoke of military or special forces training. They cleared rooms with textbook efficiency, communicated with hand signals, and moved as a single unit. These were professionals. These were dangerous. These were familiar. Zora recognized the movement patterns immediately. The hand signals. The room-clearing techniques. These weren't just any special forces. They were American. Specifically, they were from the same Black Ops program that had created her. Phantom Unit. A cold rage filled her veins. The betrayal cut deeper than she'd expected. She'd fled halfway around the world to escape her past, and here it was, hunting her again. But rage made people sloppy. Made them emotional. Made them human. Zora couldn't afford humanity tonight. She pushed the feelings down, locked them away, and became what they had made her, a weapon without conscience or hesitation. The 3 operators never stood a chance. Not because they lacked skill, but because they faced the prototype they had been modeled after. Every move they knew, Zora had learned first. Every counter technique they employed, she had helped develop. Every weakness in their approach, she had identified years ago during training exercises. 14 down. 1 left. The leader. The most dangerous. And Zora knew exactly who it would be. Inside Jin's office, tensions were reaching breaking point. Seo Jun had drawn his weapon, pointing it nervously at shadows. The three lieutenants huddled together near the bookcase, already planning their escape. Mi-young stood beside her brother, hand on his shoulder. "How much longer do we wait?" Seo-jun demanded. "It's been almost an hour. We wait until Ms. Knight returns or until we have confirmation she's been neutralized," Jean replied, voice steady despite the chaos they could hear echoing through the compound. Mi-young squeezed her brother's shoulder. "Jean, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." Jean looked up at his sister, saw the conflict in her eyes. "What is it?" Before she could answer, the office door exploded inward. Through the smoke stepped a man in full tactical gear, face obscured by a ballistic mask. In his hand, a military-grade sidearm pointed directly at Jin's head. "Target acquired," he said into his comms unit. American accent. Military precision. Seo-jun fired wildly, missing completely. The intruder didn't even flinch, just shifted his weapon slightly and put a round through Seo-jun's shoulder, dropping him instantly. "Next one goes through his brain," the man said calmly. "Everyone on the floor. Now." The lieutenants complied immediately. Mi-young remained standing, placing herself between the gunman and her brother. "Mi-young, get down," Jean ordered. "No." Her voice had changed. Hardened. "That's enough, Commander." Mission parameters specified minimal casualties. The gunman paused, then slowly lowered his weapon. "Agent Song. You're breaking protocol." Mi-young, or Agent Song, straightened her posture. Protocol was broken the moment Phantom Unit was deployed on South Korean soil without NIS authorization. Jean stared at his sister in shock. "Mi-young, what is this? What are you doing?" She didn't look at him. Couldn't. "I'm sorry, Jean. I tried to protect you my way. I tried to guide you toward legitimate business, away from the things that put you on watch lists. You wouldn't listen." The commander removed his ballistic mask, revealing a weathered face with cold blue eyes. "Your sister has been a valuable intelligence asset, Mr. Hyuk. She's the reason you're still alive instead of buried in an unmarked grave. National security concerns warranted intervention, but Agent Song convinced her superiors that rehabilitation was possible." "Rehabilitation?" Jean spat the word. "You turned my sister into a spy." "No," Mi-young finally turned to face him. "I was always a spy. Even before father died. I was recruited in my first year at university. Everything since then has been complicated." The betrayal Jean had feared had finally revealed itself. Not for money. Not for power. But for country. For some twisted version of patriotism that had turned his closest ally into his hidden enemy. "Where is the night woman?" the commander demanded. As if in answer, the lights went out completely. Not even emergency power remained. Total darkness enveloped the office. "Defensive positions," the commander barked into his comm unit. No response. "Team, report. Report." The silence that followed was deafening. No radio chatter. No confirmation. Nothing but the commander's increasingly frantic demands for status updates. Then, a voice from the darkness. Calm. Cold. Familiar to only one person in the room. "They can't hear you, Commander Hayes." "None of them can." A lighter flicked on, illuminating Zora Knight's face from below. The shadows made her look like something otherworldly, a vengeful spirit more than a woman. Blood spattered her tactical gear, though none of it appeared to be her own. "Black 09, Hayes breathed. "You're supposed to be dead." "I get that a lot." Zora's smile never reached her eyes. Funny how government paperwork can be so unreliable. Hayes raised his weapon, but Zora was already moving. The lighter went out, plunging the room back into darkness. A grunt. A thud. The sound of a body hitting the floor. When emergency power finally sputtered back to life minutes later, Commander Hayes lay unconscious at Zora's feet, zip-tied and disarmed. 15 down. Mission complete. Jin Hyuk stood behind his desk, gun drawn but unfired, staring at his sister. "How long?" he asked, voice raw with betrayal. Mi-young met his gaze without flinching. "Since before father died. I was supposed to gather intelligence on his loan shark connections. Then you started building something bigger, something that crossed international lines. My assignment evolved. You betrayed me for a flag. For a government that doesn't care if we live or die. I betrayed your criminal empire, Jin. Not you. Never you." Mi-young's composure cracked slightly. "Everything I did was to protect you from yourself. To guide you toward legitimacy before it was too late. And tonight? This attack. Not my operation. When you hired Ms. Knight, it triggered alerts in systems that monitor former Phantom Unit operatives. American Black Ops decided to eliminate both of you as potential threats. I tried to warn you without exposing myself." Jin laughed bitterly. "So the traitor was trying to save me from the consequences of hiring a bodyguard to protect me from the traitor." "Poetic." Zora interrupted, "All business. The compound is secure. 15 hostiles neutralized, all still alive. But we need to move quickly. These men answer to people who don't accept failure. Backup teams will already be en route." Jin stared at his sister for a long moment, then at Zora. "What do you suggest, Ms. Knight?" "Depends on what you want. Revenge? Safety? A way out?" "Is there a way out?" Zora nodded once. "There always is. You just might not like the cost." By dawn, decisions had been made. Alliances reconfigured. Truths accepted. Jin Hyuk understood that his empire stood at a crossroads. His sister, his betrayer and savior, had offered him a path toward legitimacy that would satisfy both Korean intelligence and his own ambitions. Commander Hayes and his team would be handed to South Korean authorities, creating an international incident that would force the American Black Ops program further into the shadows. And Zora Knight? She stood on the rooftop garden watching the sunrise, the adrenaline of combat fading, leaving behind the familiar emptiness. 15 opponents. 0 fatalities. A personal best for someone trained to leave no survivors. Jin found her there, 2 glasses and a bottle of rare whiskey in his hands. "Celebrating?" Zora asked without turning. "Commemorating," Jin corrected, pouring 2 fingers in each glass. "The night I lost my sister and found an unexpected ally." He handed her a glass. This time, she accepted it without pretense. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I rebuild. Differently this time. Mi-young, or whatever her real name is, has negotiated terms with her handlers. My legitimate businesses continue. My illegitimate ones transform or end. No prosecution for past crimes in exchange for intelligence on international players. And you trust this arrangement?" Jin sipped his whiskey. "I trust that my sister could have had me killed 100 times over the past decade and chose not to. That counts for something. And the people who sent Hayes? The ones who made both of us into weapons then tried to unmake us when we became inconvenient." Jin studied her over the rim of his glass. "That depends entirely on you, Ms. Knight. My resources. Your skills. An interesting combination if someone wanted to hunt the hunters." For the first time in 3 years, something like purpose flickered in Zora's eyes. Not just the cold satisfaction of combat, but the possibility of justice. Of making meaning from the broken pieces of her life. "I'm not for hire anymore," she said quietly. "I'm not offering employment. I'm offering partnership." The sun crested the horizon, bathing Seoul in golden light. 15 unconscious assassins lay in secured rooms throughout the compound. A corrupt Black Ops program had been exposed. A criminal empire stood on the verge of transformation. And 2 broken people, forged in different fires but tempered by the same pain, considered the possibility that survival might be just the beginning. If you believe that true strength comes from within, not from what others see on the outside, subscribe to our channel right now and share where you're watching from. Only those who judge without knowing would turn away from this truth.